Thank you, Madam Chair. So just to set the table for a moment and to be very candid, I think we are in a new Cold War with China. They certainly have been with us for some time. I think the policies that we're seeing under President Xi has accelerated that dynamic. I don't think the United States in many ways across our whole of society has fully woken up to what Xi has explicitly stated he wants to go and where he wants to go in terms of global dominance. But if you look at how the UK essentially peacefully stepped aside as a global leader post-World War II, and the United States essentially made that a fait accompli, there is a large body of analysis out there that I've seen that essentially wants China or believes that China is going to follow that same model. So that if you look at what we're facing over the next 10 years, particularly right around 2030, Chinese military dominance on the cusp if you buy into the fact that they plan to do this by 2035, our entitlements going upside down, our debt reaching 100% of GDP, if not sooner, their Navy larger than ours in quantity and possibly in some cases quality as well. So it really is a perfect storm in many ways for them to make that essentially a fait accompli, for the United States to begin sharing, if not stepping back from the world order that I think many take for granted. So going back to a deterrence model and what we can do now, between now and then, Ms. Flournoy, or really for the entire panel, what would be more of a deterrent? Getting inside the Chinese thinking, what they fear the most. Is it things like, for example, a free Hong Kong, the Uyghurs and its western on its western flank, so to speak, and its western boundary, a rearmed Japan, denial to our capital markets, a unified Korea? Are those things, what would deter Chinese behavior and aggression more? Things like that, or a few more submarines in the Western Pacific? Because I would argue, I'm probably showing my cards, that it would be the former, not the latter. And I completely agree with you, Ms. Flournoy, in counting ships and counting planes. One isn't the right metric. But number two, it's not one on the current economic paths that both countries are on that we can win. So I think a lot of this back and forth today has been great and illustrative, but I don't know that this committee is really thinking about, or frankly, the administration, the American society is really thinking about this in the right way and in a creative way, and I'd welcome your thoughts on that kind of premise.
Yeah, this is why I started my testimony by saying I realize this is the HASC and we're focused on military dimensions of deterrence, but this is a whole of government and a whole of nation challenge. And the Communist Party cares about one thing, which is staying in power in China. Mm-hmm. Period.
The Iranian regime.
And yes, and so there are lots of ways that we can help them to be very preoccupied internally, and also that we can use their missteps in places like Hong Kong, or if they were to overreach in Taiwan, to mobilize the world to push back on their coercion and their aggression. I think, again, this is not, we have to think in terms of allies and partners. The U.S. trying to counterbalance China and constrain China's negative behaviors is much harder than us rallying other like-minded states, democracies, who want to push back on authoritarian systems in general, and certainly don't want a world order in Asia that's defined by Chinese coercion.
Completely agree. And just in the interest of time, if there's any hard recommendations, I'm also on the Science and Technology Committee, and we are wrestling with, on the one hand, dramatically increasing our authorizations and investments. On the other hand, not using those investments then, or finding ourselves in a situation when those investments are essentially supplementing the Chinese, who are taking advantage of our very necessary openness. So how do we, on the one hand, make those investments that we need, keep it open enough, but also block and tackle that running, those then new technologies running right over to Beijing? I'm talking National Science Foundation, NIST, those other areas that frankly, from a cultural standpoint, have not really kind of bought on to this threat.